Welcome to This is Oregon, a podcast where we take you inside research happening at the University of Oregon and show you how it applies to your daily life. My name is Molly Blansett, and I'll be your host for this episode. Our guest for today is Beth Stormshak, Philip H. Knight Chair, a professor at the UO College of Education and director of the Prevention Science Institute. Welcome, Beth. Could you please start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about the work you do at the Prevention Science Institute and the College of Education?
Sure. Thanks for having me here today, Molly. I'm Beth Stormshak. I've been a professor here at the University of Oregon in the College of Education for 30 years now. This is my 30th year at the University of Oregon. I'm ready to celebrate. And the work I do is really focused on understanding prevention of mental health problems and behavior problems in children. I focus particularly on school age children and middle school children over the years. And I am the director of the Prevention Science Institute, and our work there really focuses on more of a lifespan approach, prevention across the lifespan from early childhood into the adult years. But I think today we're here to talk about school age children, so I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, could you tell us what some of the biggest challenges are that you see families facing today?
Well, I think families face many challenges today. They face challenges around just understanding technology, for example, how to navigate that with their kids. They face challenges that may be involved in having stressors outside their family, such as work or other stressors, such as economic stressors that impact the way they're able to parent their children or the resources they have. I think, of course, our society has many challenges that parents face in terms of just figuring out the right schools for their kids to attend, structuring up schoolwork so their kids are successful, figuring out and navigating their kids' social lives. And there's so many things parents face. And I think what's hard is that some of those challenges change all the time because our culture changes and some of the stressors we're experiencing in society change. And so parents have to adapt to those changing stressors, and that can create additional challenges when you're a parent.
And just when you figure out how to adapt to one of those stressors, your kid ages, you have new stressors to adapt to. From your research, how do early risk factors for things like substance use or behavioral problems start to emerge?
Well, there's been lots of research on this, and I think we know now pretty clearly that there are some initial risk factors that we see early on in kids that can predict later problems, but they don't necessarily predict later problems, and that's really our opportunity for prevention. But sometimes you see kids who early on are very sensitive. They are maybe quick to anger. They have difficulty regulating themselves, managing their emotions. And those kinds of temperaments can be more challenging for parents to navigate, and they can be challenging for teachers and school providers as well. And there's lots that we can do to prevent kids from going down a track where they, have struggle with those their whole life. But some of those early predictors can lead to later problems. And so it's important to really kind of stay on top of that and think about ways we can prevent those later problems from emerging.
You developed a program called the Family Checkup. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how it works?
Sure. The Family Checkup is a program that was developed here at the University of Oregon starting about 30 years ago now with a team of people who were involved and have always, there's always been a team approach to developing the Family Checkup. So I want to be clear about that. Over many, many years, actually now 3 decades of research, we have studied the Family Checkup as a prevention model when it's embedded in schools, when it's embedded in community health centers. We've studied it in early childhood and school age kids, middle school, adolescents, and young adulthood. And essentially, it's a program that really helps parents think about the strengths that they have, what they're really doing well with their child, and things that are working well in terms of parenting and their relationship with their child. And it also helps them think about areas of growth, things they might want to change or things they might want to work on in the context of that relationship. And then through a feedback session, parents think about how they want to move forward and they leverage their strengths, things they're doing well, to kind of work on the things they might want to impact or change in their parenting and the way they interact with their child. And over time, we found that this brief intervention leads to a variety of really significant outcomes for young children as well as adolescents and early adults. And those kind of outcomes include improved school behavior, improved attendance, improved mental health, such as reductions in depression and improvements in self regulation over time.
Can you talk about those specific changes that you provide or examples of small interventions that you offer during the family check-ins?
In the family checkup curriculum, there's a big focus on something we call positive parenting. And that sounds kind of intuitive, right? Let's be positive parents. But we could all use reminders around the ways we interact with our children. Every child likes to hear that they're doing a good job. They like to get praise, support. They like to spend positive time with their parent or caretaker. And those are some of the things that we remind parents of in the context of the family checkup and try to support increasing in the home with the goal of really building positive relationship for kids with their parent or caretaker.
As the parent of a new kindergartner, I very much know how overwhelming parenting can feel, especially when our kids are struggling. Based on your research, what are a few practical things that we as parents can do to support our kids' developmental and emotional health?
Well, that's a great question. Kindergarten is an exciting time, right? There's a school transition, and every parent loves that beginning kindergarten moment where you drop your kids off at school and think about all the different experiences they're going to have. It's exciting. And there's a lot that you can do to set children up for success during that school transition, including some of the things I just discussed, such as positive parenting, using praise, incentives, and support to help motivate kids, but also build that positive relationship. But also just setting up healthy school routines. And in the context of the family checkup program, we call those healthy routines, such as healthy bedtime routines, healthy sleep routines, healthy morning routines, healthy eating routines, things that set your child up for a predictable schedule and really set them up for success when they walk in the door at kindergarten because they're well rested, they've eaten breakfast, they have the clothes on that they picked out maybe the night before and they're ready to go and school ready. So those are some like basic tips for parents of kindergartners to set them up for a good year.
The mornings and the nights,
Yeah.
definitely. Some of those transitional periods, it can be a little bit tricky. You've worked with families across different age groups. What changes in parenting are important as children develop from early childhood to adolescence?
Well, of course, parenting does change over time, and that's kind of one of the challenges of parenting, right? You think just when you think you've got it down for those early childhood kids, then suddenly your child moves into a different phase. You're like, what? This doesn't work anymore. So I think there are lots of ways that parenting changes over time, and some of them are obvious, and you can think of them. Like, for example, you would maybe set different rules for a toddler or early childhood aged child than you would for a teenager or adolescent. You might have different expectations, but what's interesting about parenting is there are some core components that don't change over time, which are things like building and maintaining a positive relationship with your child and having good listening skills when your child is talking to you, or engaging in constructive communication and problem solving with your child. Now, those may look a little different in kindergarten than they do in adolescence, but those basic foundational skills of positively engaging with children are really there across the lifespan, even into the young adult years when sometimes kids need their parents even more.
Can you give us an example for the parents who are listening out there who might be really busy, might be fully working parents? Can you give us an example of an opportunity, like a micro moment where we can be better at connecting with our kids?
Yeah, sure. Well, um, you know, a lot of times when we talk to parents, they have like difficult times in the day. So a lot of parents would say that that late afternoon time, early dinner time is a hard time of the day. As we've called it sort of the witching hour or times when kids are very crabby, right? Everybody knows that crabby time of day. So thinking as a parent of what you can do to prevent that. So as we talked about, I focus on prevention, right? What are the triggers? What are the things that set your child up for being crabby during that time of day? Is it they didn't have a snack after school? Is it that they're tired? Is it that during that time of day you're trying to maybe run a bunch of errands and do things that maybe your child isn't isn't prepared to do because they're dysregulated from school. So the first step is kind of looking at what you've structured during that time period that may be contributing to this problem. And that's what we call proactive parenting. Like, look at what's happening and try to readjust your schedule during that time and see if that makes a difference. And then doing some of the things we've talked about of looking for ways your child is engaging and doing things right instead of ignoring it. It's really easy during a busy time of day. Let's say you're a parent who's home and you're trying to get dinner together for several kids and your kids are sitting at the counter quietly. It's easy to just ignore them and try to get the dinner ready and be glad that no one's making any noise. But another approach would be to turn around and say, wow, you guys are sitting there quietly and you're doing your homework and you're getting along really well today. And that's awesome. I really appreciate that. You're really helping us get dinner ready tonight. Now you're engaging positively with your child, and you're probably preventing a negative outburst later by just making that simple intervention during that time.
I love that idea. Praise and acknowledge when things are going well. What role does communication play in prevention, and how do you advise families to open up and have really tough conversations?
I think that's a difficult one for lots of folks. And of course, as we've discussed, communication changes over time. It might look differently in school age or younger children than it does in adolescence. And we have a number of different activities and curriculum that we use with parents of teenagers to think about ways to bring difficult topics forward and then just have a discussion with your teen about them. But I think some of the basic sort of tenets of good communication with a teenager involve some simple things like listening skills, asking for your teenager's opinion and then really listening to their opinion and acknowledging that their opinion may differ from yours. And then opening up opportunities to hear from them on what they think the best path forward is, and then providing your feedback and then coming to a resolution together. And actually, when you think about that whole process, that process of solving problems with someone and communicating, there are a lot of steps to that. So some of the work we do with parents is just to slow that down a little bit and think through all the steps as they communicate with their teens so that they do leave time for input from their teenager and then problem solving and then coming to a resolution. And then of course the final step in that process is returning to the problem later and seeing if it worked. Did your solution or your plan that you made moving forward make a difference later, and evaluating that with your teen. So those are some of the work we do with adolescents.
One of my favorite questions when I'm hearing my daughter talk about something that may have happened at school that was not in her favor, I always say, and then what happened? And then what happened? So that I don't get kind of a leading, so I'm not offering it like a leading question, but
Yes.
so I can see how she problem solved around it.
Exactly, and just being there to listen, to say, "Wow, and then what'd you do next?" Or "What happened after that?" And you might get lots of information, just by stepping back and listening.
You've also worked on adapting interventions for wider access, like turning the family checkup into an online tool. Why was that important to you?
When we first started doing this work, of course, 30 years ago, as I mentioned, nothing was digital and people didn't do everything online. So our intervention was in person. We met with families directly and provide the intervention in person. And we still do a lot of that. And in fact, that's going on all over the country as the family checkup has good uptake nationally in community mental health settings. But I did realize right before the pandemic and then definitely after the pandemic that there's limited access to mental health supports for a lot of families. There's long wait lists. There are communities out there that really don't even have a mental health provider. Certainly in some of our rural and outlying communities in the state of Oregon, there are no providers available. And so being able to create something that people could do asynchronously with limited support from a mental health provider and they could do it on their own time and also be able to get a lot of educational benefit from it was kind of a goal of mine. And so we have developed the Family Checkup now as a digital web based application that can be delivered to parents asynchronously, and they can do it on their own time. They can do it when they're standing in line somewhere or they have a few minutes to look at things. And it provides a lot of the content that we provided originally in our in person version, but it's much more condensed. And it includes a lot of video animations and examples that are much more engaging and easy to interact with in an online platform.
You touched a little bit on this earlier, but I am hoping that you can expand on how schools and community programs can better support families during transitional times like back to school or after a child has gone through a crisis.
Yeah, well, there's a lot communities can do, and I think let's just think about our routine. We were just talking about this before we started the podcast. Actually, the routines of having kids go back to school, and that's a really exciting time in the community, right? And communities can make a big deal of that by kind of celebrating back to school, creating welcome back to school events, which most of our schools do, making that a big transition to as children move from one year to the next and really supporting kids in their emotional development during that time. And of course, many kids do have a crisis or traumatic event they've experienced. And I think just helping families and schools be aware of those events and provide additional support for kids can be really critical during those difficult times.
For listeners who are parents or teachers or caregivers out there, what's one message or takeaway that you hope that folks leave with today?
I think parenting is hard. And of course, there are many stressors that parents struggle with. But ultimately, parents have the most contact with their child, more contact than anyone else. So their role is very important. It's, of course, super important when kids are young, early childhood, and we always think of that. But it's also really important as kids hit the middle school years, high school, and even beyond. So parents developing those skills and those relationships with their children throughout the lifespan are really important. And I think the takeaway is that what parents do really matters, and it has huge impacts on their children's mental health and development over time.
Thank you so much, Beth, for your time. I could continue talking about this a lot more. Any final thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners?
No, I think we touched on everything, Molly, but thank you for having me.
If you're interested in learning more about what we discussed in this episode, check out the links in the episode description. And don't forget to follow This is Oregon for more stories from the University of Oregon. See you next time. This is Oregon is produced by the Division of University Communications. For the latest University of Oregon research and news, visit news.uoregon.edu and find us on your favorite social media platform using the handle @uoregon. Thanks for listening, and go Ducks!